again as I stand here at the beginnings, and the tale of time told my story with brand new myths for the truth to mend. Here I am bearing arms to fight as I build walls for the blind to see.
Okay. It didn't make sense. I can sit down again. I don't need to explain the importance of the Kali Komo by the great Mr. 1-0. Okay, great. The man who just wrote the book, Yakali Komo, has just joined us. Okay, so we have a panel here that is called Kind of Blue, Jazz Beyond its Musical Form. So I'd like to do an experiment with this panel. I'd like us to approach it as a jazz performance. So what I will do is I will play the arranger, you guys will be the soloists. That's okay. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit about jazz and some thoughts about it beyond its musical form. And then I will ask a series of questions. And in the questions, I want you to approach it like you're taking a chorus, a jazz solo. So what that means is you have to do it in time. That's the thing that separates people singing in the shower and people who call themselves musicians. They have to do it in time. So when I ask you a question, it doesn't mean that you're going to tell us everything you know about it and give us every chapter and every verse. It means that in the time, you're going to hit the changes and deal with the themes that I threw out before. And then if you can do it like in 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, instead of taking 12 minutes to answer a question, then we can take a couple of choruses. We can all get it in, and then we can involve the audience as well, which is, without that, it's not a jazz event. So I don't want to be that guy that's standing there with a whip and a clock telling you to be quiet. I don't want to be that dude. So just act like you're in the jazz band, and like when you overstep your boundaries, you are stepping on everybody's toes. And so you don't need me to police you. So if that's okay, can we agree to those rules? Can we good? Okay. Jazz is more than a music form. It's in a way, it's like a more recent phenomenon in terms of its genesis, hip hop, which is not just a musical form. It never was really a musical form, right? And so like hip hop heads, they don't believe in rap music, for instance. You know, to them, that's not even hip hop. Right? That's commercial. So jazz is a form, and like hip hop, is a conglomeration, of artistic and social genres, and they're a form and a set of discourses and a set of practices and a praxis. So this ranges from literature to dance to epistemology, architecture, spiritual healing. Fred Wesley, the great musical director for James Brown, he has a cousin that taught a law course at Columbia University on jazz and the law. Right? He taught lawyers according to the music. Avant-garde expression, political protest, political revolution. These are just a few things that we can think of when we think of what jazz has meant to the world, and most especially to expressive artists, right? And nowhere do we find more testimony than in literature about the importance of jazz. Jazz is a contested space, however, and this is something that we should talk about as well. It quickly became an international phenomenon as soon as it flowered in New Orleans. And unlike most black expressions, white people were immediately drawn to it and began to stake their claims on it. And there was enormous intellectual and cultural cachet given to jazz. So you didn't have white people playing the blues. You didn't have white people playing, manga music or any of these things until later. That type of appropriation comes a generation or two down the line. But right from the giddy up, right from the beginning, you find that everybody wanted to claim jazz. And one of the things about it is that it is one of the intellectual activities in which the models are almost all black, right, instead of the other way around. So it inverts that white over black binary that so much of the cultural contest takes place. So with that in mind, another thought, a subsidiary theme, would be who has really contributed to jazz. So for me, outside of the United States, there are three places which have made invaluable contributions to jazz. Okay, so the first two are easy to name, Cuba and Brazil, right? So the Cubans and the Brazilians have affected jazz so much that if you talk to a jazz musician from New York and you say, play Afro-Cuban, that means something to them. If you say, play Brazilian, play samba, that means something to them, because these people have engaged in a way that's creative. And the only other place to me that has made a contribution of that magnitude would be South Africa, which has also creatively created their own thing, and they were in the game early, right, from the 19th century up into the present. So it's not like it's a foreign thing in a sense. So those are the overall themes that I want you to have in your back of your mind as the changes as I shoot you your chorus. The other thing that we have to say is a little more sad, and that is the absence of women on this panel, and through no fault of the organizers who tried and secured people and then had to resecure and re-scramble. In fact, I'm not on the program. I'm a last-minute addition because there's supposed to be a woman in this role. So you won't find my book out there. You won't find my CDs. But if you're interested, it ain't that hard to find. Okay, so I'd like to go to individual solos. Fred, let's start with you, please. I want you to talk about the ethics of jazz in the novel form. I'm especially interested in Bitches Brew because it seems that this is a jazz novel that rivals or maybe exceeds Ralph Ellison or the so-called jazz novelists. The South Africans have many great jazz novelists, and I include Bitches Brew as one of the examples of that. So I'm wondering a couple of things. I'm contrasting it with Ramanda Lanka's and Soroti's work, which use Coltrane as the ethical imperative and the aesthetic representation, whereas you use Miles Davis. And so I'm wondering what that means to you. When I think about Peace Ndaba, you know, who starts off as an enthusiastic artist, and then by the time he gets out of prison, they're using music, quote, to get bitches and money, you know, and so it seems to me that there's many layers of commentary on South African society and also on music and the types of people that it produces. So it's your turn.
The blues is you and me. I've never been blue until I met you. Because we are blue together, we are blues. Sipho Sepamba. Bitches Brew, well, jazz is stories, jazz is history, jazz is life. And when you listen to kind of Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, we are living that reality, asking questions, who are we, and especially as black people, because the art form which has been bastardized to some extent is a black American experience, of course, with slaves, slave roots and so on. So that's why we draw inspiration in telling these stories, because jazz is stories.
In Bitches Brew, specifically, this is a controversial fusion, a mix. It's part of a particular point in history.
It wasn't an accident that I chose that particular title from Miles, because that's when he was making a break from modern jazz and moving to uncharted territories. It's long, it's confusing, it's confused, it's very involved and labyrinthine. So in the story that I try to tell in Bitches Brew, the novel, the story itself flows as a river. It goes up and down and it meanders, it confuses itself, it finds itself again, as Miles tried to do that. Pianist Kid Jarrett said Miles Davis was playing by himself, we were just there.
Lesejo, one of the foundational stories amongst jazz autobiographies is Omar's song. And is anybody familiar with that myth, Omar's song? So Sidney Bechet wrote an autobiography called Treated Gentle. And in it, he starts off with this Omar's song, which is a folk tale, but he presents it as his autobiography, that this is his grandfather. So Omar was a slave who played in Congo Square in Louisiana, one of the few places where African drumming and dancing was still allowed in the United States. And he's a slave who is tethered rather loosely. He can walk around, he has a certain amount of autonomy. And he is the greatest musician in Congo Square. And he's there and he falls in love with a woman. And through his music and his being Omar, she falls for him too. But the slave master also lusted after this woman who was his slave. And to make a long, complicated story short, they're into sexual competition. I won't say romantic competition. They're in sexual competition. And the slave master shoots the arm of Omar, and his arm is amputated. He becomes a maroon and goes into the swamps. He lives in the runaway community. He's double-crossed by a fellow slave. He's sold out and killed. And then Sidney Bechet makes a rather astonishing statement. He says every good musician, no, every true musician, every true jazz musician is playing Omar's song. That without everything that is implied in that story, then somehow jazz is false. I think of you as a prophetic poet, someone who not only has fire, but speaks truth to power, and who doesn't just have the anger, but has the craft as well, that is very careful about his craftsmanship. So I wonder, do you think you have to be true to Omar's song to be a poet, to be a musician?
Well, there are several ways to approach that issue. On the one hand, true jazz musician, we could even extend it to the true artist, but that's also something that's rather teetering on the edge, because certain people are true to the marshmallows they paint. They are marshmallow painters, and they are true to that, they die for that. That's why I say to people, I never say always wave your face in your right. If you want to write about Snoopy or dog, go ahead and do that, you know. Anyway, but let's flip that around. From the plantations breaking north, okay, from the blue note breaking north to Europe and creating a European revolution within jazz. I think maybe I should respond to that question in the form in which I'm most at home. I hope I'll be allowed to rave off in this manner. All right. You said 2 minutes. All right. Jazz for Johnny. I wish the sunshine of the Johnny revitalizing function, jumping a bass line like humping a landmine. I wish the sunshine. Rhythmatic patterns you trace on my cranium turned canvas in form to transform the dream to the real, yet still mortal, put into the ground. Though your sound could turn conception around, your bones were scattered in mutilation's wind, foreign and hostile enough to carve the limb of your rhythm storm. Where still you rise, my prophet, beyond the heights of profit, besting the corporate gut out of the toilet into Jazz Street. I wish the sunshine. Cathartic bass sound running acid around my mind in mass dysentery of a consumerism constipated century that can cannibalize the brilliance of the Johnny ocean in motion, riding the rhythm rocket high and deep on the wings of a blue note bubbling up from the bottom of a block sewer system. I wish the sun shine. It's not bones I wish to exhume, but Mongezi feather tones to subsume creation, swinging the walls to tango, bebopping Mbakanga on a moholo backbeat, molding breath into brotherhood of Gregorian resonance, thunderless with Pukwana pulsation, breathing the art of life beyond existence, not into escapist transcendence, but sense out of dissonance. I wish the sun shine, where they are greening for the pounds and sinning with the sounds, but are born in the heart and sown in the mind. This music is a battleground star. You stare the embers of rhythm into conflagration and chop the freedom of our chords. I wish the sunshine of the Johnny revitalizing function, jumping a bass line like humping a landmine. I wish the sunshine. I think within that is carried the answer to your question. I believe
so. Brother Ngwane, you are a very jazz-like writer to me. You remind me in certain ways of Greg Tate, of whom I would say the same thing applies. And this is something I spent my whole life trying to develop style as a musician. And I write, but I write utilitarian. I wish it was as cool as Straight Ahead. but it's not. And one of the reasons is voice, right? To have a voice. And one thing about you is that you have your voice, right? I was talking to Brother Fred, and we were saying that even if you took the byline off, we would know it was you. And this has always been the thing that jazz musicians aspire to have their own sound, to be recognizable, right? So if you hear Sonny Rollins for 1/2 of a second, you know it's Sonny Rollins. You hear Mankunku for 1/2 a second, you know it's him, because they have reached that level of artistry, right? So I want to ask you about jazz as an aesthetic presentation of social ideals and pop music. So if I can just be given 30 seconds to unpack that just a little bit. For me, one of the greatest inventions of jazz is the rhythm section, right? So the rhythm section is the bass, the drums, the piano, the guitar, and the way that they all improvise simultaneously from beginning to end of the song, and at the same time are responsible for the groove. And then the soloist or the singer is interacting with this. And it seems to me that this is a way of social organization, a way of aesthetic freedom that is quite new in the world, and it came through jazz. So to me, anytime I hear music with a drum kit or with a rhythm section, I feel like I'm listening to one of the children of jazz, whether it's consciously named that or not, because it's built upon that fundamental idea about how you exist together in a collective, so on and so forth. So I'm wondering, to what extent do you find pop music or pop culture that's not limited to music being an expression of jazz or not?
So I have to save the hardest question for me. Two things. I'll try to be short, brief. So two things happened in my life in answering the first part of your question, which is the voice. How I acquired the voice. When I was growing up, I grew up surrounded by the healers, the Amatwasana, the Sangomas. Back in Pretoria, they used to call them Amanchomani. And Sunday, it was my grandfather's church. And during the week, it was this healer initiates. And the sound that they did with their feet created a rhythmic, percussive element at night when they slaughtered the goat. And that almost seeped into my consciousness somehow. That was the first, voice. The second voice, talking about the writerly voice, I was a new freelance writer for City Press. I was maybe the age of 22 or 23, and around 1994. And I met the editor of City Press back then called Bralen Kalane. And he used to say to me, write like you write jazz. Just go listen to your favorite musicians. He says, who's your favorite musicians? Then I'll rattle them off. Nuke, so and so, and so and so. All of those, Cecil Taylor and all of that, says to me, write exactly like that. And I spent almost 3 years in an apprentice trying to understand the cadences and build it into my voice. That's the first part of the question. The second part, which is about pop culture, that's what you asked. I don't write about jazz. Percy writes about jazz. He does jazz and blues poetry. He writes about jazz occasionally, among other things. I don't write about jazz. It scares the shit out of me. Jazz is not for chance. It's not for serious deal. Yeah, I did a whole lot of interviews with jazz musicians. But I don't write about jazz. What I do, I don't write about jazz within the jazz sort of definition and scope. I write about jazz outside of jazz. So for me, jazz, how I express it through punk culture and black rock and roll, and through hip hop and other ways in which I write. And so for me, that's where jazz breaks its own boundaries and gets to pour into popular culture and get interpreted in the way people dress, the way they walk, the way they want to be heard, scamto, the way they tilt their head, the way a woman would look at you and say, don't fuck with me. So those kind of gestures pour into social popular culture construct. I would like to talk to you about what jazz is to me later. Thank you.
Okay. We want to hear that. So that'll be the second chorus. But we just finished the bridge. We're coming home to the end of the chorus with Percy. Percy, I want you to talk to us, please, because at least 3 of you have worked as a journalist and have gone on to do other types of literature as well. And so it seems to me that there's something fundamentally jazz-like about being a journalist, because it's something that you have to do daily or weekly or monthly with some type of regularity, and you have to improvise over things that are current or not, and you have to do it with the pressure of time, which is, of course, the number one pressure that the jazz musician has to master. And so I'm wondering if your work as a journalist, or if the very conceit or concept of journalism is jazz-like to you. Did it influence your writing, for instance, when you wrote your book, Yakalinko?
Hi guys. Yeah, Brother Salim, I think, everything that I do creatively aspires to the state of jazz. I try and live up to the greatness of my heroes and the greatness of my father's music, as it were. Born into the hip hop stuff, so I come into that wanting to tell a story, but not only tell it, but be cool while doing it. Right? So one of the people that influenced me into the love of stories is my uncle, who is Banzula, right? Still wears floshams and that. So he taught me that, you don't only appear, but you are cool while doing it. This idea that, to maybe bring in Albert Murray, that elegance is the most sublime manifestation of human vitality. Is that we know that you're alive well in the way that you walk, the way you carry yourself, the way you sit there, as cool as you want to be. And so, a lot of people don't know, I didn't study journalism, I actually studied fine arts. I was trained as a painter printmaker, right? So I come into journalism from wanting to tell a particular story about the arts. And so, my biggest fight with my editors is that I refuse to cover anything else unless it has to do with the arts, because that's why I came into this thing in the first place. That does not make you very popular with editors, But so, once I'm in there and I'm learning the craft of journalism and this idea that, you have 4 or 3 days to come as humanly possible, as close as humanly possible to a masterpiece, before deadline. For me, has always been something that resonated with the idea that you start as you enter the song, and you don't know how it's gonna end. So when you sit down at your typewriter, you don't know how you're gonna end. You have an idea at the back of your head of how this story or what the story is about. But whilst you sit there, you write it, as best and as cool as you want to be, and in there, I think, the jazz ethic is in there. It defines everything. I don't know who discovered water, but it certainly wasn't the fish. So the music is in everything, or the idea of jazz, this thing called jazz, which is not music, if we would agree, it has nothing to do with music. It's a way of being in the world, right? And if it's a way of being in the world, even when you're writing, even when you're eating, even when you're walking or you're driving, you are doing that thing called being jazz.
Am I going to blow some more? No, I don't think so. I think the people want to hear you. I enjoyed all of your statements. And Ngwane, I'm going to follow your lead. Can you each tell us what you did?
All right. Let's backtrack a little bit here, but Stanza Sonic, the hip hop crew, we've been talking about hip hop, let's get onto that then. Stanza Sonic released a track called Talking All That Jazz, meaning you're talking shit. That's what it meant. So jazz is whatever it is to different people. But what I embrace as the jazz ethic is how my universe dances around the tip of my pen when I write. For me, that's jazz. When I can reduce my entire life experiences to that moment when I'm sitting in front of a desk when I don't have a desk, all right? When I've got my notepad on my knee, and that's the jazz moment for me.
So, often you find yourself at the precipice and you don't know what the hell is going on. And you don't know how to go on. And you think, it's just not working out. Whatever the wisdom, whatever the smarts, whatever the learning you can try and use to make sense of what it means to be here doesn't make sense. And then you hear Miriam Makaiba's How Then from that album Promise 1974, and you get it. And you get up and you move. And you don't only move, but you move elegantly with whatever blues you may be having. Right? And you don't only win, but you win beautifully. For me, that's jazz. Like, as young black in the land of the fallen land, and you don't know what's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen, and you get up and you do your thing, even when everything about the universe says that shit can't be done. You get up, you do it, and you don't only do it, but you do it with style, and it's beautiful, and your mother looks at you and says, look what I've done. For me, that's jazz.
Okay, unless someone on the panel has a sudden burst of inspiration and you must reveal this now, I'd like to bring in the audience. Gil Scott-Heron.
No, this speaks to your opening statement about artists of social conscience, people who are in this world not in order to run around creating art for fuck's sake, who believe that we should utilize our art for the betterment of all humanity, or in order to discover our own humanity within our creations, right? That goes back to my definition of jazz. And we're saying jazz music beyond its oil. We can take it right down then to the likes of Gil Scott-Heron, and he said South Africa was the third of the spaces that created this. But then from here we can run right up to Nigeria, to Fela Kuti. You get what I'm saying? So it's bigger than just this little capsule in which we might be wanting to cover these things. I wonder if everybody knows the name Gil Scott-Heron. Gil Scott-Heron dropped the prototypical rap track, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. But the revolution has been on television so many times, dressed up in movies and all sorts of things since then. Anyway, alright, let's go. To Gil Scott-Heron. The revolutionary is now a pseudo-psychopath on the compact disc warpath. Run, nigga, run was inspiration, injection of the last poet's intonation. Insurrection, Gil Scott-Heron was circled on. A mouth-to-brain respiration, wrought subversion, a liberation doctrine that brought art to the fight for immunization against the degeneration of Garvey's children. The spawn of Fanon, on the run from the super-duper shit man, a lives and acquisition, the unborn have to make requisition. The terror campaign's gone electronic in the bionic generation of a computerized nation that won't falter at the altar of self-immolation, Satan collaboration, spiritual contamination like experimentation with extermination. Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution is on television. Tricks of the 666 cripple mystics at the feet of the crucifix. No place for romantics but relics of the funkadelic ground on the family stone. Hendrix experience had George Clinton for president of the streets parliament. No relation to the White House sex or phony man but the one on the James Brown sex machine. Salam alaikum. Malcolm X the clan to a Booyah tribe of Shabazz. Made the enemy go public on base. Brought the production out of the boogie down. Got the Paris Panther on the howl, on the prowl, on the tracks of its jungle grass. Become poor righteous teachers, not preachers of fractured futures. When winter in America froze bloodstreams in South Africa, Gil Scott Heron, the revolution got on television. We choke in angel dust. Stars go bust. Street art visions gone to rust. Creeping up the element of the pop charts, acting out industry designated parts of self-emasculation, masturbation on the BBC, SABC, MTV screen, and flop goes the hip hop nation in sudden homicide running on the bloodline of the griot, running route from dusk to African dawn. They called it Negroid, hell-descended, devil child, but black was malo-poetic mental attitude in Fulani frontal attack in psychological genocide time. But now Gil Scott Tarren, the revolutions, the industry's mutant children perform a systematic life devaluation. Coward style, they defile and revile the warrior profile. Get the revolution's pantomime broadcast in audio, visual, bomb blast. Gil Scott Tarren, the revolution is on television. What, the revolution is on television. What, the revolution is on. Switch off that shit.
Okay. I think we have a lot to chew on. Is there a question or a statement that anyone would like to make?
Mic check.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm sitting here with such a sense of black pride. I think wherever I've been in the past year, I felt a sense of black people awakening. And this is confirmation of that awakening. We are awakening. And this is such a great time to be alive as a great person, as a black person rather. And yeah, pride all in my heart.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I am in total agreement with my sister here, but mine is a question. I think I picked up here and there, but I do want your panelists to comment on the origins of jazz. It came out, as I say, here and there, but to me, it's a matter of a collective in the beginning, especially during and immediately after the slave trade. Jazz evolved or started as the collective expression of blacks who had been shipped across the Atlantic Ocean and found themselves in a land where they never imagined they would be. And they were not allowed as slaves to use their native languages to communicate among themselves. So I suppose, but I do want confirmation of this, or even rebuttal, that jazz in some way originated from this wanting to communicate by slaves who, because they came from Africa, I mean that's why they say jazz is from Africa also, because they had this rhythm. I think one of you talked about the percussion as, you know, the percussion as part of jazz that they admire most. But the drumming, I lived in West Africa for a long time. And when you hear those drums, I mean they talk, they speak. And it's very easy to connect that to your Brazilian, because you know some of the first slaves were taken to Brazil, the place called Salvador. And as a result, if you go to Brazil, and I've been, you find there's jazz everywhere in that same time. And in the US, places like Louisiana, way down south, jazz is still very much alive, although white America has appropriated jazz and made it its own musical expression, but I think we need to distinguish that it's blacks who not only started jazz but still own it. I don't know if you want to comment.
I take it. Okay, I think you understand it very, very well. The thing about jazz, if there were no Africans in America, there would be no jazz. Right? Without Africans in America, it would be Canada or Australia or something like that. It wouldn't be the United States as we know it. So you're right. These were people who were captured. And unlike the other people in Brazil, I've been to Salvador, you're right, it's amazing. You go to Cuba, Trinidad, all over the diaspora, you find more specific continuities between West African and Central African music and so-called American music. The United States is the exception because of the Stonewall Rebellion in 1790, when the slaves almost took over the largest colony it wasn't even the United States yet. And the way that they did it is they used African religion, African languages, and African instruments. Like you say, they could talk with the drum. They could literally send messages like telegraphs. And so once they lost that fight, the white people lost that fight, and they had to get the neighboring colonies to come and subdue the Africans. So there became a whole list of black codes. And among these codes is you can no longer speak an African language. You can have your tongue cut off for that. You can no longer play an African drum. You could literally have your hand cut off for that. You were no longer to practice African religions. So there are all these legislations, anti-African, anti-black codes. And the thing about it is, you can legislate against specific practices, but you can't legislate how somebody philosophically interacts with the world. You can't legislate away their spirituality. And so what happened is, African culture continued, but it had to continue with new forms, with new instruments. And this is what happened, and this is why jazz occurs. It's built around the drum set, which was invented in the United States, right? So this is a compromise. You can no longer do a Ghanaian or a Malian or Senegalese drum choir the way you do in South Africa, but you could approximate that through the drum kit, where one person can play 4 rhythms simultaneously, right? And you can build the music around that. And so, yes, everything that makes the music vital is owed to Africa. It comes from Africa. It is a decidedly Pan-African form. Pan-Africanism has almost gone out of favor now. It's like you're an unreconstructed nationalist. But there's a reason why Pan-Africanism is first championed amongst African Americans, right? Because they couldn't say, I'm a Zulu, I'm Twi. They couldn't say that. That was taken from them. So they are amongst the first people to look at Africa as being a discrete place, a site of imagination, right? Geographical or otherwise, right? And so the notion of Pan-Africanism is constituent of jazz and much other in African American culture, right? So it's African, but with the African American flavor and attitude, I would say. But then it's owned by people who are not from the United States as well. And they bring their own flavors, like the jazz in Salvador is world class, right? Yeah.
Of course, you are better placed to articulate this very, very succinctly. Because not only are you a practicing musician, you are a scholar of the music, of the art. the story that you're telling about the sisters asking as well is also very well articulated by Brother Winton Marsalis in Congo Square, the story of jazz. Congo Square is on the Mississippi banks, the Mississippi that where we believe jazz was born. It was the crucible from what Africa brought and what Americans who were there already fused, and they created this thing called jazz.
You know, my sister, the thing about this thing, especially about the origin of it, is that it's a contested space, contested definitions, and then there's multiple origins. And the idea of authenticity within the black tradition is fictional because every time black folks recreate themselves, immediately after they create something and the Western world latches onto it, black people have already moved on to create something else anew. So our tradition is based in fluidity. So yes, right now jazz is understood to be a distinct American art form. But there's a musician called Louis Jordan, one of the originals of jazz, one of the innovators of jazz. He said, jazz is not a combination of African music and Western instrumentation. He says only scholars who want to take the African out of the equation come with that sort of story. He says we arrived here fully fleshed. We arrived here, our music arrived here as developed music, as jazz already as it is. So what we did was to infuse it through whatever instrument we found. That is Louis Jordan, one of the innovators of what I call rock and roll as well.
I think it's basically been covered, this, but the one thing I would say is, we reduce this to, okay, jazz music started with slavery, etc., which I don't stand against. But the best way for me to express this is by going this way. Jamaica, reggae. Trinidad, soca. And all those sprang out of slavery. Why was it not jazz within all those places? Why did it manifest? The music of Africa manifested itself differently in all those places. And I'll tell you why. Wherever Africa goes and has to survive, it adapts to the conditions that be. That's all I can say.
Yes, sir. We want everyone to hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure how simple my question is, but I just want to answer that length, the origin of jazz. I would like to pose a question to everyone as to this jazz genre of music. Who is it for, and is it accessible, more especially in our country? Because I'll make an example. Joy of Jazz was recently moved to Santin, and it was previously, if I'm not wrong, it was in Newtown. And it's not actually, the jazz experience in Santin City and the Joy of Jazz is not really a cheap, experience. So I just want to find out, who is it for? Is it for a certain group or is it for everyone?
Am I allowed to answer? Yeah. Jazz is for you, my brother. It's for everybody. Jazz is an expression of freedom. It's an expression of us imagining us in our best selves and the world that we would like to live in and how we would like to live. That's what jazz is. It's an expression coming from the African point of view, from the black point of view. So it's the imagination of freedom, not freedom as license, right? But freedom as earned, as being in response to humanity. Now, the thing about jazz, even the term jazz, is, let's say, find out, most jazz musicians don't like it, right? So the cats that I play with, they just call it the music. They call it the music. They don't call it jazz because that's a term that had pejorative connotations, and it came not from the people that invented or who practiced the music. So that's one way of answering that question. Another way of answering the question is, how do we value what we value, right? And so since I have the privilege of teaching young people about the music, I conduct a thought experiment. And this is how the thought experiment goes. How many of you know that Beethoven was a genius? You know, raise your hand. And usually, everybody raises their hand, right? It's a no-brainer. He clearly was a genius, right? So then I say, okay, this is the thought experiment part. In my left hand, I have $1 million. In my right hand, I have a Roscoe, a 45 pistol. Okay, so I'm gonna play Scarlatti, then I'm gonna play Beethoven. You tell me which one was Beethoven and which one was Scarlatti. And if you get it right, you get the $1 million. If you get it wrong, you get the Roscoe. Then you say, how many people will take that challenge? Far fewer hands go up, right? There's not anywhere near the certainty that there was that Beethoven was a genius. So the results of the experiment is that people know Beethoven was a genius, but not because they know anything about his music. They can't identify it for $1 million. The reason that they know he's a genius is because the culture tells them this. There are classes, there's statues, there's movies, there's all kind of things, right? So if we, you know, I live in KZN. Millions of rand are given to the European art music classical band. Millions are not given to Maskandi musicians, they're not given to jazz, but they're given to the European art form because this is seen as something that is valuable. It's not cost effective, they can't sustain it on ticket sales. It's something that's subsidized by the government because this is deemed important. So if jazz was deemed important, we would know we would know that Mankunku was a genius the way we know that Beethoven is a genius, you see? But we haven't been taught that, right? And so it's been appropriated, it's been something that is something that is not for you. But that's debatable, I think. I think it's for you. The sister here has had her hand up. And then the brother here has his hand up. Do we have a mic for her?
I've got a question for you.
But she was next, my brother. I'm so sorry. Her hand went up before. Please forgive me.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I was just inspired by the fact of the origin. And when the colleague there said these genres, they developed differently in different settings where Africans are. And I remember some years back, we were arguing about this origin of jazz and soul music and all that. And one of my colleagues long ago said they associate this extreme talent in being able to originate these genres, especially jazz and soul music, and even reggae, especially during the days of Bob Marley, with the history of oppression. That it seems that people who have gone through oppression, they develop a special creativity in being able to develop something that is unique. It is neither the traditional music which was there, and it is neither the new music of European one which they have been subjected to. They develop their own thing. So then somebody says, yes, look at America and look at South Africa, the similarities of the kind of music that comes out of those two. And then you can also talk about Brazil and the others that it seems they stem from their days of slavery. And in South Africa, they stem from their days of oppression. And I remember when we were young, we used to travel by train. There were no taxis, there was nothing else. And you would meet workers on the rail line when they were working. They were working and singing in harmony and in unison and guided by their picks. And their sound would change. When the pick goes up, it changes, and when the pick goes down. And this is the rhythm they would maintain. We don't see those things anymore now, because that oppression is gone. Can we now say that this originality can no longer be there? Must it really be stemming from oppression? That's all.
There's so much oppression to go around. No, we don't want to reduce it to oppression. We don't want to say that that's the only thing that the music is. But I think we could speak for many, many hours about contemporary and continuous forms of creativity that are happening. It's still going on, I think. Yes. And this guy, would you next, please?
Good afternoon, Amango.
And the sister.
They usually say that jazz improvisation lives in the edge of life. And what I've noticed is that geniuses who dwell in this edge of life, some of them, or the one that I'm exposed to, use mind alternate, what's the word? Altering substance. Thank you. What's the connection there, and is it necessary?
Let PC go for it.
I wanted to say that the music is itself a mind-altering substance, right? But on the real, I mean, if you look at all indigenous cultures everywhere, we have trans traditions, right? And trans traditions, Madondo was speaking about Manjomani earlier on. And as a Praetorian, I'll talk about, Malopo, Malombo, Malo poets, right? The idea of spirituality, and so people who've had a lot of cannabis sometimes are diagnosed with what they call chemical psychosis, right? So there is a way of going towards that particular place where the mind and the spirit dwells. You can either go there through creative exertion, or you can go there chemically. Right, and I think it's because human beings everywhere have had an understanding that something happens to you when you go into that space of trance to do whatever it is that you do. And I think jazz musicians are not exceptions because they function within the human space where there are these traditions. Yeah? It's like saying, is food or is dancing or is lovemaking necessary? All of these are things that exist in the life of the body.
There are genius jazz musicians who didn't take drugs. Eric Dolphy, just to name one. John Lewis, there are many. But that is one of the great unwritten books, Jazz and Drugs, and we're all scared to do it because we're demonized so much as black people and as artists and as jazz musicians, and so we're afraid to talk about it in a kind of free-flowing way. But it's a pertinent question. I don't want to belittle it at all.
My question is to Pacey, please. Tell us, why did you choose to write the book about Yakalinko, not Meinenberg or Black Lightning? I Almost Lost My Mind by Jimmy Smith. Take 5 by Dave Brubeck, you know, why Yakalinkomo, Yilling away no Mangongo.
Culture, it's about the importance of the music. But fundamentally, what I found in Yakalinko, which I could not find in many other music, I'm not saying it's not there, is that because of his love for John the Blower, who died 12 months exactly to the moment that Mangungu records, because of that love that he had with John Coltrane. And if you listen to Mangungu, you know, you can understand that. He gave me an opportunity to speak about the connection between South Africa and he
gave me an opportunity to speak about the continental African experience in South Africa and the African American experience, that connection. But also, you know, Tate Wali Sorote is here somewhere. I saw him earlier. Yakalinkomo has life in literature through the poetry of Tate Wali Sorote, which, from a book, you know, similarly named, came out in 1972, right? And also, Mangungu, you know, gave me a space where I could speak about 1968 as a moment in South African black life. You know, 1968 is the year that the Black Consciousness Movement is born, right? Swaziland gets its independence, and it's 4 years exactly after Rivonia trial and 8 years after what you call Sharpeville massacre. But also this convergence of modern modes of expression in the jazz mode, and also the fact that he chose Yakalinkomo, which is a very loaded title, if you understand African cultures and their love for the cow, or their, you know, the African cultural cattle complex. So I could speak about ancestry and culture and speak about jazz at the same time. So this convergence of the African experience that is at once modern and at once traditional in the township of, you know, any South African space. And also speak about literature and speak about Dumile Feni's drawings. He did a suite of drawings in response to the track. So we here, you know, with this album you have a space to talk about the visual arts, you have space to talk about literature, you have space to talk about music itself, and you have space to talk about Africa on the continent and Africa, you know, in the Americas, you know, to connect what Amiri Baraka calls the railroad made of human bones at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, right? Yeah. So, yeah, and that connection for me, it was rich, and the tragedy here is a lot that did not go into the book, you know, that for limitations of the medium that I could not go there. But yeah, you know, I could go on forever. I mean, that's a very important record. It's a very important record, and of course, you know, the idea to do a book is that in 2009, I had a lovely conversation with Brother Salim Washington when he was here on the Fulbright, and we talked about Mangungu. I had been thinking about Mangungu, and then from then I started taking. I haven't told him yet, but but I took him seriously more and more and more because, you know, after having that conversation and going on a couple of years later, yeah, I'm still working on the book.
I'm just saying. Thank you, Percy. But what gave you the temerity, the chutzpah to write about Mangungu? Thank you very much.
My sister. No one has waved a whip at me. I think we're almost at the end. So perhaps this is it. So you have to ask your question very quickly.
Okay, mine is not a question, but it's an appeal. And I'm not addressing this only to the panelists, but to every one of us that is here. I think among us are those people that are doers, that have the connections, that have the know-how. I'm appealing for a dedicated jazz radio station. I think that would be a great platform for jazz education. I think it would address the question of jazz being inaccessible. I want somebody there sitting and telling me that was Miles Davis, and on the keys it was Herbie Hancock. Then I want to explore Herbie Hancock. What else does this man do? Yeah, there just isn't enough jazz, and that's my appeal, so please.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. We have one more sister.
First of all, thank you so much for the very informative and wonderful discussion. I guess my question actually goes back to the beginning, where Brother Salim made an acknowledgement at the absence of women. And basically, I consider jazz as a form and expression of the black aesthetic, right? And I'm sure everybody else here does, but at the same time, it is a very male kind of black aesthetic.
Masculine.
No, hang on. No. Yeah. As in, it's a very male, because it embodies both the masculine and the feminine, but there is a specific absence of the female, unless the female is there specifically doing vocals. I'm not saying it's exclusive to all jazz bands, but generally, right? And also where the female is also kind of more of this, of an object of love, object of heartbreak, but to what extent is there room for the female in addition to the feminine within the jazz space? And I don't know who can answer that question, right? Because, and also just looking at the origins of jazz and talking about origins with regards to Africa, when you look at, I'm from Zimbabwe, so when you look at the mbira instrument, for instance, which is essentially not an instrument but a spirit, it's an ancestor. And in a lot of Shona traditions, only men can play the mbira. And then you had Choniso Maraire, and then that's where you look at femininity and masculinity, right? But I just wanted to know to what extent is the origins of jazz and also the pervasive nature of patriarchy still something that kind of confines jazz expression as a full and holistic black expression?
That's an important question. You're absolutely right. Patriarchy runs amok. To be fair, you have to say that it is part of a larger patriarchal discourse that's not unique to jazz. So the whole notion of the cult of domesticity, women being home, therefore they can play the piano, they can sing, but they're not supposed to play horns or drums or anything like that. And this was policed. This was policed. Right, so when a little girl said, I want to play the trumpet, she was discouraged from that in school oftentimes, right? So you're right. Unfortunately, a lot of jazz musicians behave very patriarchally, unfortunately. So a lot of times, and I see, as an educator, I get to see this, what happens to the young women who want to enter the boys' club. And oftentimes, although it may be crudely expressed or it may be subtly expressed, but it's often the price, the ticket is sex, that your role is to either be a mother to me, to be a servant to me, or to be sexual release for me. And so it is as horrible as you can imagine it, right? There are even tales of women on the road in the old days being raped and so forth. And so this is a big problem. And one of it is because of the whole notion of being macadocious, right? Of being the hip cat that can put his cigarette at the right angle, who can diddy bop down the street, and he can talk all the slang and get all the women. And that was one persona of a jazz musician. And so for me, this is one of the million things about John Coltrane, other than the beautiful music that he played, was that he gave us another persona of black masculinity. There was nothing about that at all, right? So he was raised by women, not by men in the way that Miles was, right? And he had a much more feminist approach to life and to music, right? And so bands that have women in them, they have a different feel from being bands that are all men. That's just a fact. Anybody who's played in those bands would know that. So you raise your finger on something that's troubling and often very ugly. But I hope we don't take that to mean that there is no space, that we can't teach our boys and our girls to be humans, including those who decide to be jazz musicians. We have to go. Thank you. You were great participant.